The morning sun was just breaking through the grimy windows of Diego's auto repair when the rumble of a massive truck filled the quiet street. Maya looked up from the carburetor she'd been cleaning, wiping her grease-stained hands on her coveralls. At 23, she'd spent more time in this garage than most people spend at their regular jobs, but she still felt like an outsider among the veteran mechanics who worked here. "What's that noise?" asked Tommy, one of the older guys who'd been working with her father for nearly 15 years. He stepped outside and Maya heard him let out a low whistle. "Boss, you better come see this." Diego emerged from his office, coffee mug in hand, and Maya followed behind. What she saw made her jaw drop. A massive flatbed truck was backing into their lot, carrying what looked like a piece of history. It was an old fire engine, painted in that classic red that had faded to a rusty pink in some spots. The thing was enormous, easily twice the size of modern fire trucks, with chrome that had lost its shine and rubber hoses coiled like sleeping snakes. "Holy cow," whispered Jake, another mechanic. "That's one of those old Seagrave engines. Haven't seen one of those in years." Chief Anderson climbed out of his patrol car looking tired and frustrated. Maya had seen him around town before, a big man with graying hair who always seemed to be in a hurry. Today, though, he looked defeated. "Diego," the chief called out, shaking hands with Maya's father. "I hope you can work miracles because that's what we need right now." "What's the story, Chief?" Diego asked, walking around the massive fire engine. Even he looked small next to it. Chief Anderson rubbed his forehead. "This beauty here is our 1952 Seagrave pumper. Been the pride of the department for decades. We use her for parades, special events, community stuff. 3 months ago, she just died. Won't start, won't turn over, nothing." Maya moved closer, drawn to the old machine like a magnet. She'd always loved older vehicles, the way they were built solid and simple, before everything got computerized and complicated. "We've had every expert in the city look at her," the chief continued. "Peterson's crew spent 2 weeks on it. Nothing. We even flew in a specialist from the company, cost us $5,000 just to have him tell us it's hopeless." Tommy scratched his beard. "What exactly happens when you try to start her?" "That's the weird part," Chief Anderson said. "Sometimes nothing at all. Sometimes she'll turn over a few times and then just stop. Last week she actually started for about 10 seconds, then made this grinding noise and quit again." Diego walked slowly around the engine, his experienced eyes taking in every detail. Maya watched her father work, noticing how he looked at the machine the same way a doctor might examine a patient. She'd learned so much just by watching him over the years. "The thing is," the chief went on, "the city council is breathing down my neck. They want to scrap her, sell her for parts. Say we're wasting money trying to fix some old relic." Maya felt her heart sink. The idea of this beautiful old machine being torn apart for scrap metal seemed wrong, almost criminal. "But she's not just some old truck." The chief's voice got emotional. "This engine responded to the Peterson fire in '67, saved half the downtown. She was there for the flood in '78, pumping water out of people's basements for 3 straight days. This truck has history, you know." The flatbed operator started unloading the fire engine, and Maya was amazed at how smoothly such a huge machine moved. Even broken, it had a dignity that modern vehicles couldn't match. "So what's your timeline?" Diego asked. "Well, that's the thing. I told the council I'd give it one more shot. I've got until Friday to show them proof it can be fixed, or they're hauling it to the scrapyard Monday morning." Maya's father looked thoughtful. "That's only 4 days, Chief. I know it's not much time. But Diego, your shop has a reputation for solving impossible problems. If anyone can bring this old girl back to life, it's you." While the men talked business, Maya climbed up on the truck's running board to get a closer look at the engine compartment. The hood was already open, revealing a motor that looked like something from another world. Everything was bigger, heavier, more substantial than modern engines. The parts were connected with thick cables and solid metal brackets instead of plastic clips and wire harnesses. She could smell old oil and metal, mixed with something else, something that reminded her of her grandfather's cologne. He'd worked on engines like this back in his day, before he passed away when Maya was 16. She remembered him telling her stories about the old days, when mechanics had to understand how things really worked, not just which computer code meant what. "Maya," her father's sharp voice broke her concentration. "Get down from there. You'll hurt yourself." She climbed down, feeling embarrassed. The other mechanics were all looking at her like she was some kind of curious kid who didn't belong. "Sorry. Pop, I was just looking." Chief Anderson noticed the exchange and smiled, but not in a mean way. "You're Diego's daughter, right? I've heard you help out around here." "She's got good instincts," Diego said, but Maya could hear the warning in his voice. "Don't get too involved. Stay in your lane." "Well," the chief said, clapping his hands together, "I'll leave you folks to work your magic. Like I said, we've got until Friday." As the chief walked toward his car, Maya found herself staring at the old engine again. There was something about it that called to her, some puzzle that was begging to be solved. She'd grown up listening to engines, learning their different voices, understanding what each sound meant. "You think you can succeed where everyone else failed, little lady?" Maya turned around, surprised. Chief Anderson was standing right behind her, his arms crossed, a slight smile on his face. The garage went quiet. Tommy and Jake stopped what they were doing. Even Diego froze, waiting to see what would happen. Maya felt her cheeks burn. She knew the chief was probably just making conversation, but something in his tone rubbed her wrong. "Little lady," like she was some kid playing dress-up in her father's garage. "I don't know," she said quietly, "but I'd like to try." The silence stretched out. Then Jake started chuckling and Tommy joined in. Soon the whole garage was filled with uncomfortable laughter. "Maya," her father said gently, "this isn't like changing oil or replacing brake pads. This machine has stumped some of the best mechanics in the state." But Maya was looking at the chief, who hadn't laughed with the others. His expression was serious now, like he was actually considering her words. "You know what?" Chief Anderson said slowly. "Why not? Everyone else has given up on her. What would you need?" Maya's heart started pounding. Just time to look at her properly. 48 hours, Maya! Diego stepped forward. "You don't know what you're saying." 2 days, the chief repeated. "Alone with the engine." "Yes, sir." Chief Anderson extended his hand. "You've got a deal, young lady. But understand, if you can't fix what nobody else could fix, that's it. No more chances." As Maya shook his hand, she could feel the eyes of every person in the garage boring into her. She'd just committed to something that might destroy her reputation before it even got started. But looking at that old fire engine, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Pure electric excitement, like her grandfather was standing right there beside her, whispering that some puzzles are worth the risk. The next morning, Maya arrived at the shop before anyone else. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities about the old fire engine. The massive Seagrave sat in the corner of the garage like a sleeping giant, waiting for her to prove herself or fail spectacularly. She made a pot of coffee and stood looking at the machine in the early morning light. 48 hours seemed like forever and no time at all. Everyone expected her to give up by noon, but Maya had other plans. "You're here early," came a voice behind her. Tommy had arrived, lunchbox in hand, looking surprised to see her already working. "Couldn't sleep," Maya said simply, pulling on her work gloves. Tommy shook his head. "Kid, I've been working on engines for 20 years. That thing has been looked at by guys with more experience than all of us combined. What makes you think you can figure it out?" Maya didn't answer right away. She was already walking around the fire engine, but differently than the day before. This time she was really looking, taking in every detail. The morning light showed things she hadn't noticed yesterday. "Maybe I'll see something they missed," she said finally. By the time Jake and her father arrived, Maya had already started her inspection. She wasn't diving into the engine compartment like everyone expected. Instead, she was studying the outside of the truck, running her hands along the metal, looking at every bolt and bracket. "What are you doing?" Diego asked, setting down his coffee cup. "Getting to know her," Maya replied, not looking up from the side panel she was examining. Jake laughed. "Getting to know her? It's a truck, not a person." But Maya ignored him. She'd learned from her grandfather that every machine had its own personality, its own way of telling you what was wrong. You just had to know how to listen. She opened the engine compartment, and instead of immediately reaching for tools, she just stood there listening. The other mechanics thought she was wasting time, but Maya was doing something none of the previous experts had bothered with. She was trying to understand the engine before she started taking it apart. "This is ridiculous," she heard Tommy mutter to Jake. "She's just standing there doing nothing." "Give her a chance," Diego said, but Maya could hear the worry in his voice. Around 10 o'clock, the betting started. Maya pretended not to hear, but she caught bits of conversation. $20 says she gives up before lunch. I'll take that bet. She's stubborn like her old man. I say 2 o'clock. Either way, this is going to be embarrassing. Maya felt her cheeks burn, but she forced herself to focus. She'd asked for this chance, and she wasn't going to let their doubt get to her. She spent the first few hours just observing, looking at how different parts connected to each other, studying the way belts and hoses were routed. Most importantly, she was looking for anything that seemed out of place. Modern mechanics relied heavily on computer diagnostics, but this old engine was from a time before all that technology. If something was wrong, you had to figure it out the hard way using your eyes, ears, and experience. Around noon, Maya made an interesting discovery. There was a maintenance logbook tucked behind the driver's seat, covered in dust and grease stains. Previous mechanics had probably ignored it, focusing on the mechanical problems. But Maya had learned from her father that paperwork could tell you as much as the engine itself. The logbook went back decades, filled with entries in different handwriting. Oil changes, belt replacements, brake work, all the routine maintenance that kept the old truck running. But as Maya read through the entries, she started noticing something strange. "Find something interesting?" Diego asked, bringing her a sandwich she didn't remember asking for. "Maybe," Maya said, not looking up from the logbook. "Pop, look at this. See these entries from about 5 years ago?" Diego squinted at the faded writing. "What about them?" "Look at the parts that were replaced. New water pump, new alternator, rebuilt carburetor. All good parts, all installed properly according to the notes. Sounds normal to me. That's what I thought too until I looked at these entries from 2 years later." Maya flipped a few pages. Same parts replaced again. Water pump, alternator, carburetor. All of them. Diego frowned. "That's odd. Those parts should last longer than 2 years, especially on a truck that doesn't get driven much." "Exactly. And look here." Maya pointed to another section. 6 months later, carburetor rebuilt again, then again last year. Either they were getting really bad parts or someone was installing the wrong parts on purpose, Maya finished. Her father looked skeptical. "That's a pretty serious accusation, Maya. Maybe they just had bad luck." But Maya was already climbing back under the hood, this time with a specific purpose. If someone had been installing wrong or inferior parts, there might be evidence. She started examining the components that had been replaced multiple times according to the log. The carburetor was the first thing she checked. It looked fine from the outside, but when Maya looked closer, she noticed something odd. The part number on the side didn't match what should have been installed on this engine. "That's weird," she muttered, getting out her phone to take a picture of the part number. "What's weird?" Jake had wandered over, curious despite himself. "This carburetor. It's close to the right one, but not exactly. Like buying a size 9 shoe when you wear a 9.5. It might work for a while, but it's never going to fit right." Jake looked where she was pointing.
"How do you know that?"
Maya pulled out her phone and showed him a picture she'd found online. "This is what should be on this engine. See the difference in the mounting holes?" Jake studied both carburetors. "I'll be damned. You're right. But why would someone install the wrong part? That's what I'm trying to figure out." As the afternoon wore on, Maya's examination became more focused. She started checking every component that had been replaced according to the maintenance log. And the pattern became clear. Almost every part was wrong in some subtle way. Not obviously wrong, not so wrong that the engine wouldn't run at all, but wrong enough to cause problems over time. The water pump was designed for a different model year. The alternator was slightly underpowered. Even the spark plugs were the wrong heat range. Individually, each wrong part might not cause catastrophic failure, but together they created a perfect storm of mechanical problems. "This is incredible," Maya said to herself, but loud enough that Tommy overheard. "Find something?" Tommy asked, and for the first time he didn't sound skeptical. "I think so. Tommy, look at this." Maya showed him what she'd discovered. Every major component that's been replaced in the last 5 years is wrong. Not completely wrong, but wrong enough. Tommy studied the evidence. "Are you saying someone did this on purpose?" "I don't know yet, but this many mistakes don't happen by accident." By evening, Maya had documented a pattern of substituted parts that went back years. Her father had long since stopped trying to talk her out of the project. Instead, he was helping her research part numbers and cross-reference the maintenance logs. "Maya," Diego said quietly, "if what you're thinking is true, this isn't just about fixing an engine anymore." "I know, Pop, but I can't ignore what I'm seeing." The other mechanics had gone home, but Maya was just getting started. She'd found her grandfather's old shop manual for Seagrave engines. and she was cross-referencing every part on the truck against what should have been installed originally. "You should get some rest," her father said around 10 o'clock. "You've been at this all day." "I'm not tired," Maya lied. She was exhausted, but she was also onto something big. The pattern of wrong parts was too systematic to be coincidental. Someone with access to the fire department's maintenance records and parts ordering system had been systematically sabotaging this engine. As she worked through the night, Maya began to understand why the previous mechanics had failed. They'd been looking for obvious problems, testing the parts that were there instead of questioning whether those parts should be there in the first place. Her grandfather had always told her that the best mechanics weren't just good at fixing things, they were good at asking the right questions. And Maya was beginning to realize she'd been asking the wrong questions all along. The real question wasn't what was broken. The real question was who had broken it and why. Maya hadn't slept at all. By the time the sun came up on her second day, she'd filled 3 notebooks with part numbers, dates, and cross-references. What had started as a simple engine repair had turned into something much darker. She was sitting on the floor next to the fire engine, surrounded by papers when her father arrived with coffee and donuts. "You look terrible," Diego said gently, handing her a cup. "Thanks, Pop, that's exactly what every girl wants to hear." Maya managed a weak smile, but her father could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "Did you sleep at all?" "Couldn't. Every time I tried to close my eyes, I kept thinking about what I found." Maya gestured at the papers spread around her. "This is bigger than just wrong parts, Pop. Someone has been planning this for years." Diego sat down beside his daughter. "Show me what you've got." Maya pulled out her most important notebook. "Remember how I found all those wrong parts yesterday? Well, I spent the night tracing them back through the maintenance records. Look at this." She showed him a timeline she'd created. 5 years ago, everything was normal. The fire department was using the right parts, buying from their regular suppliers. Then something changed. What kind of change? New guy started handling the parts orders. Someone with enough authority to change suppliers, approve purchases, even modify maintenance schedules. Maya flipped to another page, and that's when the wrong parts started showing up. Diego studied the timeline. "This is pretty detailed work, Maya, but it's still just a theory." "That's what I thought too until I found this." Maya pulled out a separate folder. "I called my friend Lisa, who works at Patterson Auto Supply. You know, where the fire department used to buy their parts." "Used to?" "Exactly. 5 years ago, they stopped ordering from Patterson and switched to a company called Metro Parts Distribution. Lisa said it was weird because Patterson had been their supplier for over 20 years and they'd never had any problems." Diego frowned. "So what's wrong with Metro Parts?" "That's where it gets interesting." Maya opened her laptop, which was balanced precariously on an overturned bucket. "I looked up Metro Parts Distribution. Guess what? The company was started 5 years ago, right around the time the fire department switched suppliers. That could be a coincidence. Maybe, but look at this." Maya showed him a business registration document she'd found online. The owner of Metro Parts is listed as Robert Chen, but when I dug deeper, I found something else. Maya pulled up another document. Robert Chen is a fake name. The real owner is listed in these tax documents as Raymond Webb. Diego's eyes widened. "Webb, as in Ray Webb, the fire department's former head mechanic. The guy who retired 2 months ago with full honors and a nice pension." The garage fell silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. Diego stared at his daughter, then at the papers spread around them. "Maya, do you understand what you're saying? You're accusing a retired city employee of deliberately sabotaging fire department equipment." "I know how it sounds, Pop, but look at the evidence." Maya spread out more papers. Webb had access to all the maintenance schedules. He knew which trucks needed parts and when. He could order whatever he wanted through his fake company. Pocket the difference between good parts and cheap knockoffs, and nobody would question him because he was the expert. But why would he risk his career and pension for some extra money? Maya had been wondering the same thing. "I don't think it was just about money. Look at this pattern." She showed him another chart. The sabotage wasn't random. He was targeting specific vehicles at specific times. "What do you mean?" "The 1952 engine was perfect for testing his system. It's only used for parades and special events, so if something went wrong, it wouldn't put firefighters in immediate danger. He could see how long his sabotage parts would last before failing." Diego was beginning to understand. So he was using the old engine as a test case. Exactly. And once he figured out the perfect combination of wrong parts, parts that would work just long enough to avoid suspicion, he could apply the same method to the active fleet. Maya pulled out another folder, this one thicker than the others. I spent the last few hours calling around to other fire departments in the region. Guess what? 3 of them have had mysterious equipment failures in the last 2 years. All of them bought parts from Metro Distribution. The implications were staggering. Diego sat back against the fire engine, processing what his daughter had uncovered. Maya, if this is true, Webb didn't just steal money. He put people's lives at risk, I know. That's what kept me up all night. Maya's voice was shaking now. What if one of those sabotaged engines failed during a real emergency? What if someone died because a fire truck broke down on the way to a call? Before Diego could respond, the garage door opened and Tommy walked in, followed by Jake. They both stopped when they saw Maya surrounded by papers. Rough night? Tommy asked, but his tone wasn't mocking anymore. He'd seen enough to know that Maya was onto something real. You could say that. Maya started gathering up some of the more sensitive documents. She wasn't ready to share everything with the whole garage yet. Find anything useful? Jake asked, pouring himself coffee from the pot Diego had made. Maya looked at her father, unsure how much to say. Maybe. I think I know why the engine has been failing. Well, that's something. Chief Anderson called this morning. He's coming by around noon to check on your progress. Maya's stomach dropped. She'd been so focused on uncovering the sabotage that she'd almost forgotten about the deadline. She had less than 6 hours to decide what to do with the information she'd discovered. Pop, can I talk to you privately? Maya asked. They walked to the other side of the garage, away from Tommy and Jake. What are you thinking? Diego asked quietly. I'm thinking I'm in over my head. Maya ran her hands through her hair. I came here to fix an engine, not uncover a criminal conspiracy. But you can't just ignore what you found, can't I? What if I just fix the engine and keep my mouth shut? Replace all the wrong parts with the right ones and everybody's happy. The fire department gets their truck back, the chief keeps his job, and I prove I can handle the impossible repair. Diego studied his daughter's face. Is that really what you want to do? Maya was quiet for a long moment. No, but I'm scared, Pop. What if nobody believes me? What if they think I'm just some kid trying to get attention? Webb was respected in this community for 30 years. I've been a mechanic for about 30 minutes. But you have evidence, do I? I have a bunch of papers and theories. Webb could say he was just trying to save the city money by finding cheaper suppliers. How do I prove he knew the parts were wrong? Diego put his arm around his daughter. Maya, I've watched you work for the last 2 days. You've done something that trained professionals couldn't do. You found a pattern that everyone else missed. That's not luck, that's skill. But what if I'm wrong? What if you're right? Maya looked at the old fire engine, sitting there like a giant red puzzle that she was finally starting to understand. In a few hours, Chief Anderson would arrive expecting either a miracle or an admission of defeat. She hadn't expected to have to choose between fixing a machine and exposing a crime. There's something else, Maya said quietly. I found Webb's personal cell phone number in some of the old maintenance logs. What if I called him? What if I asked him about the parts? Maya, no. If he really did sabotage this equipment, confronting him directly could be dangerous. Or it could get him to confess. Sometimes people want to talk about what they've done, especially if they think they got away with it. Diego shook his head. This isn't a movie, Maya. Real criminals don't just confess because someone asked them nicely. But Maya was already thinking. She had a few hours before the chief arrived. Time enough to fix the engine with the right parts, which she'd already ordered from Patterson Auto Supply. But she also had time to dig a little deeper into Ray Webb's activities. What if there are other victims? Maya asked. What if other fire departments lost equipment because of him? Don't they deserve to know the truth? Diego could see the determination growing in his daughter's eyes, the same look she'd had as a child when she decided to take apart her bicycle to see how it worked. Whatever you decide to do, he said finally, you won't be doing it alone. By 11:30, Maya had made her decision. The right parts had arrived from Patterson Auto Supply, and she'd spent the morning replacing everything that Webb had sabotaged. The old Seagrave engine was purring like a kitten, better than it had run in years, but that wasn't enough anymore. She'd organized all her evidence into a neat folder, copies of everything she'd discovered about Ray Webb's operation. Her hands were shaking as she waited for Chief Anderson to arrive. You sure about this? Diego asked for the 10th time. No, Maya admitted. but I can't pretend I don't know what I know. Tommy and Jake were working on other cars, but Maya could tell they were listening. Word had gotten around that something big was happening, though nobody knew exactly what. Chief Anderson's patrol car pulled up right at noon. Maya watched through the window as he got out, straightening his uniform and checking his watch. He looked like a man preparing for bad news. Here goes nothing, Maya whispered to herself. The chief walked into the garage and immediately looked toward the fire engine. Maya was standing beside it, but instead of looking defeated, she looked nervous and excited at the same time. "Well?" Chief Anderson said simply. "She runs," Maya said, patting the side of the old truck. The chief's eyebrows shot up. "She runs? Want to hear her?" Maya climbed into the driver's seat and turned the key. The massive engine roared to life immediately, settling into a steady, powerful idle that filled the garage with its deep rumble. It sounded strong and healthy, like it could run for another 70 years. Chief Anderson stood there with his mouth open. Tommy and Jake had stopped working completely, staring at the impossible sight of the dead engine running perfectly. "I'll be damned," the chief said, walking closer to the engine compartment. "She sounds better than she has in years." "How did you do it?" Maya turned off the engine and climbed down. This was the moment of truth. "Chief, I need to show you something. But first, can you sit down?" Chief Anderson looked confused. "Sit down? Why?" "Because what I'm about to tell you is going to make you angry."
Really angry. Diego brought over a couple of folding chairs and reluctantly the chief sat down.
Maya pulled out her folder and took a deep breath. "The engine wasn't broken," she said. "It was sabotaged." "What do you mean, sabotaged?" Maya opened the folder and pulled out the first document. Every major component that failed on this engine was the wrong part. Not obviously wrong, but subtly wrong. Wrong enough to cause problems over time. She showed him the maintenance logs, pointing out the pattern of replacements. "Look at this. Same parts replaced over and over, way more often than they should need to be." Chief Anderson studied the papers, his frown getting deeper. This could just be bad luck with parts suppliers. "That's what I thought too, until I traced where the parts were coming from." Maya pulled out the business registration documents. The fire department switched suppliers 5 years ago to a company called Metro Parts Distribution. So Metro Parts is owned by Ray Webb. The chief went very still. "Ray Webb, our Ray Webb?" "Yes, sir. He created a fake company and started selling you inferior parts at premium prices. But it gets worse." Maya showed him the timeline she'd created. Webb wasn't just stealing money. He was testing his sabotage method on this engine first, because it's only used for special events. Once he figured out the perfect combination of wrong parts, he expanded to other departments. "Other departments?" "I called around yesterday. Fire departments in 3 other counties have had mysterious equipment failures in the last 2 years. All of them bought parts from Metro Distribution." Chief Anderson was no longer just frowning. His face was turning red, and Maya could see his hands clenching into fists. "Are you telling me that Ray Webb, my head mechanic for 15 years, has been deliberately sabotaging our equipment?" "Yes, sir. And not just ours." The chief stood up and started pacing. This is unbelievable. Ray Webb saved the department thousands of dollars by finding cheaper suppliers. He was Employee of the Year 3 times. "Chief," Maya said gently, "he didn't save you money. He charged you full price for cheap parts and pocketed the difference." She showed him price comparisons between Metro parts and legitimate suppliers. You were actually paying more for inferior parts than you would have paid for good ones. Chief Anderson sat back down heavily. "My God, do you know what this means? If our equipment failed during an emergency, people could have died." Maya finished quietly. The garage was completely silent now. Even Tommy and Jake had stopped pretending to work and were listening to every word. "How long?" the chief asked. "How long has this been going on?" "Based on the maintenance records, about 5 years. Right around the time Webb got promoted to head mechanic and gained access to the parts ordering system." Chief Anderson buried his face in his hands. 5 years. 5 years of compromised equipment. 5 years of putting my firefighters and this community at risk. "Chief," Diego said carefully, "what's the next step here?" The chief looked up and Maya was surprised to see tears in his eyes. "Next step? Next step is I call the district attorney and the state fire marshal. This is criminal fraud, endangerment, conspiracy. Ray Webb is going to prison for a very long time." "There's more," Maya said quietly. "More? How can there be more?" Maya pulled out her final piece of evidence. I found records showing that Webb retired early because he knew the engine was about to fail completely. He didn't want to be around when people started asking questions. That's why he retired so suddenly, the chief said, understanding dawning in his voice. He kept saying he wanted to spend more time with his grandkids, but it never made sense. Ray lived for this job. He knew this engine would fail soon, and when it did, there would be an investigation. So he got out while he could still claim his pension. Chief Anderson stood up again, this time with purpose. Maya, I need copies of everything you've found. Every document, every phone record, every piece of evidence. I already made copies, Maya said, handing him a thick folder. Everything's in there. The chief took the folder with shaking hands. Do you understand what you've done? You haven't just fixed an engine. You've uncovered what might be the biggest corruption case in this county's history. I just wanted to prove I could fix something nobody else could fix, Maya said. Well, you did that and a whole lot more. Chief Anderson looked at the old fire engine, now running perfectly. When I challenged you yesterday, I never expected this. What happens now? Diego asked. Now I make some very difficult phone calls. The mayor, the city council, the state attorney general. This is going to be a nightmare for everyone involved. The chief paused. Everyone except Maya. He turned to look at her directly. Young lady, what you've done here is remarkable. Not just the detective work, though, that was impressive. The courage to come forward with this information, knowing it could destroy careers and reputations. That takes real character. Maya felt her cheeks burning. I just did what felt right. Most people wouldn't have. Most people would have fixed the engine quietly and kept their mouths shut. Chief Anderson shook her hand firmly. The fire department owes you a debt we can never repay. You don't owe me anything. Chief, I just want to make sure this never happens again. It won't. I promise you that. The chief looked around the garage at Tommy and Jake, who were still standing there in shock. I hope everyone here understands that what was discussed today doesn't leave this building until I've had a chance to notify the proper authorities. Everyone nodded solemnly as Chief Anderson prepared to leave. He turned back to Maya one more time. That job offer I mentioned yesterday? It still stands. Head mechanic, fire department. You've more than proven you can handle the responsibility. Maya smiled. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. After what you've done for us, you've earned the right to write your own ticket. After the chief left, the garage remained quiet for a long time. Finally, Tommy spoke up. Maya, I owe you an apology. When you took on this job, I thought you were in over your head. I was in over my head, Maya admitted. Maybe, but you swam anyway. 3 months later, Maya stood in the courthouse hallway, adjusting her best dress for what felt like the 100th time. She'd never been inside a courthouse before, and definitely never as the star witness in a criminal trial. You okay? Diego asked, straightening his own tie. He looked about as comfortable as she felt, which wasn't saying much. Just nervous, Maya admitted. What if I mess up on the stand? You won't. Just tell the truth, same as you did with Chief Anderson. Through the courtroom doors, Maya could see Ray Webb sitting at the defendant's table with his lawyer. He looked older than she remembered, smaller somehow. It was hard to believe this quiet man in the gray suit had put so many lives at risk. Maya Rodriguez, a woman in a business suit, approached them. I'm Assistant District Attorney Peterson. We spoke on the phone. Maya shook her hand. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for preparing me for this. Are you ready to testify? As ready as I'll ever be. The courtroom was packed. Maya spotted Chief Anderson in the front row, along with several firefighters she'd met over the past few months. In the back, she saw Tommy and Jake from her father's garage, both wearing their best clothes and looking proud. When Maya was called to the witness stand, her legs felt like rubber. But as she began telling her story, starting with that first day when she accepted the chief's challenge, her confidence grew. Miss Rodriguez, the prosecutor said, can you explain to the jury how you discovered that Mr. Webb had been sabotaging fire department equipment? Maya took a deep breath. It started with the maintenance logs. I noticed that certain parts were being replaced way too often. When I looked closer, I realized they were all the wrong parts. She explained her investigation, how she'd traced the parts back to Metro Distribution, how she'd discovered Webb's connection to the fake company. The jury listened intently as she described finding evidence of sabotage at other fire departments. What made you decide to report this, rather than simply fix the engine and say nothing? The prosecutor asked. Maya looked directly at Ray Webb. Because people's lives were at stake. If a fire truck breaks down on the way to someone's house, that someone could die. I couldn't live with keeping that information to myself. Webb's lawyer tried to make Maya look inexperienced, questioning whether a young mechanic could really understand complex engine systems better than trained professionals. But Maya's detailed knowledge and careful documentation spoke for themselves. Mr. Webb had 15 years of experience, the defense attorney said. Are you really claiming you know more than he does? No, sir, Maya replied calmly. But I wasn't trying to hide criminal activity. That makes investigation a lot easier. The courtroom erupted in quiet laughter, and even the judge smiled slightly. The trial lasted 3 days. Other witnesses included Chief Anderson, representatives from the fire departments in neighboring counties, and forensic accountants who had traced the money trail. The evidence was overwhelming. Ray Webb had stolen over $200,000 across 5 years, but the financial theft was the least of his crimes. Expert witnesses testified that his sabotaged equipment could have failed at critical moments, potentially costing lives. When the jury returned with their verdict, Maya was holding her breath. Guilty on all counts. Maya felt her father's hand squeeze hers as the courtroom buzzed with quiet conversation. Ray Webb showed no emotion as the judge scheduled his sentencing hearing. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Maya had gotten used to media attention over the past few months, but it still felt strange being treated like some kind of hero. Maya, how does it feel to know you've helped prevent future tragedies? One reporter asked. I just hope this makes people think twice before cutting corners on safety equipment, Maya replied. Lives depend on this stuff working when it's needed. What's next for you? Maya smiled. Well, I've got some interesting job offers to consider. That was an understatement. In the 3 months since her discovery, Maya had received offers from fire departments in 6 different cities, 3 major automotive companies, and even the FBI, who were interested in her investigative skills. But the offer that interested her most had come from Chief Anderson. 2 weeks after the trial, Maya sat in the chief's office at the fire station, looking at a contract that would make her the youngest head mechanic in the department's history. I've talked to the city council, Chief Anderson explained. They've approved a complete overhaul of our maintenance and parts procurement system. New suppliers, new oversight procedures, new everything, and they want you to design and oversee the whole program. Maya read through the contract carefully. The salary was more than she'd ever imagined making, but that wasn't what impressed her most. You're giving me authority to approve all parts purchases? She asked. Within reason, yes. You'll report directly to me, but day-to-day decisions about equipment maintenance will be yours. That's a lot of responsibility. Maya, you uncovered a 5-year conspiracy that nobody else even suspected. I think you can handle ordering spark plugs. Maya laughed. When would I start? Whenever you're ready. But there's something else. Chief Anderson pulled out another folder. The state fire marshal wants to hire you as a consultant. They want you to audit equipment and procedures at fire departments across the state, looking for problems similar to what you found here. All of them? All of them. Apparently, your investigation has sparked a statewide review of fire department procurement practices. 3 other cases of suspected fraud have already been discovered. Maya felt overwhelmed. I don't know if I'm qualified for something that big. Maya, you're the most qualified person in the state for this job. You're the only one who's actually caught someone doing it. That afternoon, Maya drove to her father's garage to discuss the offers with him. She found him under the hood of Mrs. Chen's Buick, cursing at a stubborn bolt. Pop, we need to talk. Diego emerged from the engine compartment, wiping his hands on a rag. Let me guess. Job offers? Yeah, big ones. They sat on a couple of overturned crates while Maya explained the fire department position and the state consulting job. Sounds like you've got some decisions to make, Diego said. I don't want to abandon you here. This shop has been in our family for 3 generations. Diego smiled. Maya, this shop will always be here, but opportunities like this don't come along every day. You really think I should take the fire department job? I think you should do whatever makes you happy. But I will say this. You've already proven you can spot problems that other people miss. Maybe it's time to use that skill on a bigger scale. That evening, Maya made her decision. She called Chief Anderson and accepted the position, with the understanding that she would also work with the state fire marshal on special investigations. 6 months later, Maya stood in the fire station garage, watching as her team performed routine maintenance on the fleet. The 1952 Seagrave sat in a place of honor near the entrance, fully restored and running perfectly. "Boss?" called Michael, one of the newer mechanics. "The ladder truck's making a weird noise. Want to take a look?" Maya smiled at being called boss. It had taken some getting used to, being in charge of mechanics who were older and more experienced than her. But they'd come to respect her thorough approach and her absolute insistence on using the right parts for every job. "What kind of weird noise?" Maya asked, walking over to the truck. "Hard to describe. Kind of a grinding sound when the engine's under load." Maya listened to the engine for a few minutes, then popped the hood. Within 10 minutes, she'd identified the problem, a belt tensioner that was starting to fail. "Good catch," she told Michael. "Let's replace it before it becomes a bigger problem." As she filled out the work order, Maya thought about how different her life had become. A year ago, she'd been fighting for respect in her father's garage. Now she was responsible for keeping an entire fire department's fleet operational. Her grandfather would have been proud, she thought. He'd always told her that the best mechanics weren't just good at fixing things. They were good at preventing problems before they happened. Maya had learned she was good at both. The old Seagrave engine stood nearby, a reminder of where it all started. Sometimes Maya would run her hand along its fender and remember that nervous young woman who'd accepted an impossible challenge. She'd proven she could fix the unfixable. More importantly, she'd proven that asking the right questions was sometimes more valuable than having all the right answers. And she was just getting started.